I'd like to acknowledge the Birrarung people as the traditional owners of the land where this recording was made. Over the past few months, I've been walking through reserves around Melbourne, Naarm, and recording conversations along the way. I've met with traditional owners and First Nations peoples, conservationists, ecologists, and others who've chosen a place that matters to them. We walk and talk about nature, what lives there, what's changed, and what needs protecting. You'll hear our footsteps, the wind in the trees, the birds overhead, and the city not too far away. This is Finding Melbourne's Nature. We're on another walk, this time through Banyule Flats Reserve with Dr Jacinta Humphrey. Jacinta's an urban ecologist whose work focuses on birds in city landscapes. We talk about how they persist, adapt, and sometimes even thrive in urban environments. We walk and talk about her journey into conservation, what makes Banyule Flats such an important spot, and how urban spaces can support bird life. Along the way, we also get into skinks and all things urban ecology.
Yeah, we're already on.
We're already on? There's always plenty of birds here.
So I literally haven't been here. So that's billabongs right there, is it?
Yeah, there's a whole heap of different billabongs that connect to the Yarra River Birrarung.
Yeah.
So they're either managed by Melbourne Water or Parks Victoria, or potentially both. But yeah, they kind of go through different wetting and drying cycles depending on how much rain we've had recently and the climate, I guess, over summer. But yeah, great spots to see water birds.
Yeah, right. And
Lots of turtles.
Oh, really? And you've come here a lot?
Yeah. So as I said, I used to live really close. This was kind of just within my 5K when we were in and out of lockdowns, so I could get here. But yeah, couldn't necessarily walk the whole thing, unfortunately.
When did you start your interest in sort of urban conservation?
It probably started during my honours year.
Yeah, right.
So my honours, I was studying a particular species of skink called the swamp skink. So it's a threatened animal in Victoria. And one of the reasons that they're threatened is due to urban development, because we tend to want to build houses in the places where these things live.
Yes.
And yeah, I got really interested in that as an issue, and you know, we're clearly going to need more and more houses to support our population. So we need to be thinking about where we put them to kind of limit the impacts on what already lives in these spots. So yeah, I decided I wanted to do further study in that space, but then I jumped ship from herpetology or lizards into birds.
Right.
And that's when I discovered that birds are really awesome.
Was that a difficult transition, or did it just flow naturally?
It wasn't necessarily a difficult transition. I'd never been a birder, like as a kid or anything growing up. I'd just always loved animals and the environment in general. But it was definitely a steep learning curve in terms of being able to identify, you know, a wide range of species, and including like learning their calls.
Yes.
That was quite a lot of practice.
How did you do it? Did you sit there with the recordings and
Yep.
just like
I
repetitive?
sure did.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my supervisor recommended. And then we did a couple of practice runs. I spent some time at Nanyuck Tamboree Wildlife Sanctuary at La Trobe Uni, just making sure I was confident before I started collecting data.
Who was your supervisors?
I was supervised by Professor Andrew Bennett.
He's great.
Who has recently retired, and Dr. Angie Haslam.
Oh, wonderful. That's an all-star cast.
It was an all-star cast. I was unbelievably lucky to land that team.
Yep.
We're going to head in somewhere over here on the right.
Really?
Yes.
I'm excited. So we're heading off the trail.
We are going off track a little bit.
That's great.
Hopefully not in the way of these people on bikes.
Do you still have that soft spot for swamp skinks? Because they're glorious little
definitely.
creatures, aren't they?
They're such cool little things, like, or not even little, like they get up to like 30 centimetres long.
Really?
In total length of the the thing.
Can you describe them for someone who might not have seen one?
Yeah, they're quite like a large skink. So if you think not as big as like a blue-tongued lizard, they're a bit skinnier than those guys, but they're quite dark in colour, and then they've got lots of little yellow flecks.
Yep.
And they love to bask in the sun, like many reptiles.
Yep.
And they will actually dig their own burrows, like at the base of trees, or they'll sometimes use existing burrows that are made by like yabbies or other kinds of large invertebrates. Yeah, and they just love really wet areas. So you'll find them in like coastal kind of mud flats and areas along different kinds of creeks and swamps, and yeah, lots of freshwater spots.
Wow, we have just emerged at a beautiful, what is it, a wetland or a artificial lake, or how?
So it's called the Banyule Swamp, but it's like a large body of fresh water, and again it's not permanent by any means. Sometimes it does dry out almost completely, but plenty of water here at the moment, and quite a few old like eucalypt stags in the water itself, so they're really good habitat for ducks and galahs and cockatoos. There's a few nest boxes attached to them as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And also some on like wooden stumps out in the water, so they'll be good for like Australian wood ducks.
The swamp skink stuff, does that ever stretch out to this area at all?
No, so most of my work there was actually down on the Mornington Peninsula.
That's where I'm
So
from.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, down around Rosebud, Hastings, there's quite a few records of swamp skinks in that part of Victoria.
Chinaman's Creek or whatever.
Chinaman's Creek, yep, that's like the hot spot for them.
It's amazing. I think they're about to rename it too. I think I heard from the council.
Okay, that'd be good.
it's a wonderful site, and the swamp skinks there just seem so prevalent. And
Yeah.
I've seen some. They're a good urban species in some ways, because I've seen them in Kilsyth South too, and some other spots around Greater Melbourne. So hanging on in some of the urban areas.
Yeah, they're not too fussy. So like they'll turn up in some pretty degraded kind of creek lines, as long as we've got decent kind of understory vegetation for them.
Yep.
So that they've got that cover. And they can actually swim short distances as well. They're a super cool lizard.
That's awesome. And how far did you go down this birding obsession? Because it's a deep well to go down if you want to go down like it is.
It is. Yeah. So I guess like I'm not the whole way down, that's for sure. I don't have like a list of every species I've ever seen. I know a lot of people that do, but I was really worried that would just turn into an obsession if I started on that path. I try to see a few new species each year, but yeah, I don't necessarily have a strict list. I just enjoy seeing whatever birds happen to turn up. I'm not too fussy.
Is there any species that you're kind of angling for and thinking about, or you'll get out of bed for, so to speak?
Like my favourite bird is the yellow-tailed black cockatoo, because they're just incredible birds, massive, and they've got this amazing, unique call. Oh, there's a white-faced heron just appeared here.
Graceful, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. But yeah, the yellow-tailed black cockatoos, they sound what I imagine dinosaurs would have sounded like. And you can hear them coming from like kilometres away, so I will always get out of bed for a yellow-tailed black cockatoo.
What do you think their relationship is with Melbourne? I guess in my time, it seems like you see them more these days than maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, they are turning up, and like they'll fly, pretty close to the CBD as well. They're moving around all the time, and it's possible that they're more common here now because they are losing habitat in other parts of the state. So obviously, like the massive 2019, 2020 fires took out a bunch of important habitat for those guys. So potentially that's pushed them closer to the city. But there are still, pockets of habitat for them here. Like they love to eat casuarinas. They also love to eat from exotic pine trees. So if there's any large areas with pines, you're probably going to have them turning up at some point.
And as far as habitat, what do they need? What would we need to have in an urban context to keep them around?
I was think we'd need a pretty large patch of habitat.
Yeah,
they're a
right.
very big bird. And they're also going to need some pretty big natural hollows to be able to successfully nest and breed. And we don't have a lot of hollows of that kind of size left. Those trees are very rare, unfortunately. Lots of rainbow lorikeets flying over.
They're making a bit, quite the debut in the city, aren't they?
They are.
They're really becoming quite prevalent. I've been speaking to a few people, and they were sort of almost getting worried about their impact in sort of being in such large numbers. Have you ever thought about any of that? Or
Yeah, it's come up a bit actually. So some of my PhD focused on noisy miners, which are already a bit of a controversial Australian native bird. And sometimes people also have asked me, well, what about rainbow lorikeets? There's so many of them now, and once upon a time, like say back in the 1970s, 1980s, they were nowhere near as common as they are today. They've just moved into the city and been incredibly successful. And they can be somewhat aggressive to other birds as well. So they may well be impacting what lives where.
Interesting. And what species did you cover in your PhD?
So basically anything and everything.
Really? So it's the whole suite? That's cool.
So I surveyed 30 different suburbs of Melbourne, and I recorded any and all birds that I could see or hear. Obviously they were mainly terrestrial birds, not a lot of water birds like we can see now.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything from, your everyday Australian magpie through to more kind of less common woodland birds and those occurring out in like temperate forest areas.
Were there any birds you were really worried about in terms of the trajectory of their life in the city in the future?
There's quite a few,
Yeah, okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like any kind of small insectivores are ones that I would say are concerning. So they're really small birds that are feeding on insects. Often they're living in kind of dense shrubs or bushes, and we just don't have a lot of areas like that. Like if you think about your local park, it's probably a patch of grass and a couple of scattered trees. So there's nothing there that's going to provide for those types of birds. And then they're also dealing with a bunch of threats in the form of like domestic cats, foxes, and also noisy miners, pushing them out of places.
Yeah, the noisy miner issue's massive, isn't it? And it is. It seems to be something that a lot of people are really sort of feeling and noticing, like it's a present sort of thing. Is there a big solution that you see that you could sort of expand across a landscape, or is it just more of something that we're going to have to adapt habitat to suit the other things more, or...?
Yeah, it's really tricky in an urban context. So it's something that people have been aware of in more rural parts of Australia for some time. And there have been some like culling taking place in those more rural areas. So that means that people go in with a bunch of highly trained shooters, and they will try to reduce the numbers of noisy miners at a particular site. And there's some evidence to suggest that that can be successful. But we can't do that in a city. There's way too many risks. So we have to think about how we can change the habitat that's available so that it's less suitable for noisy miners and more suitable for a range of other birds. So as part of my PhD, what I found was that if we had sites, so I'm talking residential streets, parklands, bushland reserves, if they had more of those dense shrubs and bushes, I was getting far fewer noisy miners and more of those smaller birds that are not doing as well in cities. So I think shrubs are definitely part of the solution.
Really? That's interesting. So do you think in the sort of recommendations from some of the work that you've done, do you think we need to start getting shrubs into people's backyards and...
Yes.
Really? And so,
absolutely.
Right. And even these little urban parks that we have and stuff, considering bird...
Yeah,
right.
Like obviously they're never going to provide the same, quality of habitat as what you might get in a large reserve like this, but it all adds up and it all helps. So if we can, start to rethink the way that we're kind of designing our streets, our local parks to get a bit more of that mid-story vegetation in, I think that could have a big impact on what types of birds are turning up in our suburbs.
That seems achievable though, doesn't it? Like that's something that could actually happen.
I think it's achievable.
Yeah.
Like if we're talking about a street, like thinking about people's nature strips, there's definitely some of that work starting to happen, but
Yep.
often people are kind of ripping up the lawn and just putting in like low growing indigenous kind of flowers or grasses. We really need to get a little bit more height if we can. And the problem that I often find is people start talking about human safety.
Okay, yep.
And having that visibility both around roads and in local parks. And that's tricky.
So you're talking like 6 foot height, or what are you talking? 10 foot?
So I kind of, in my PhD, was thinking about things that are either like from 50 centimetres off the ground through to like 2 metres high.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so anything within that range is going to provide a bit more shelter for some of those smaller birds. Things like, say, superb fairy wrens that are often at ground level and then retreating into denser vegetation for shelter.
And are
That kind of thing.
Are you thinking of things like around us? Are you thinking of prickly things like we've got tree
Yes.
lomatias and we've got tea tree and
Yeah, prickly things are great.
Yeah, right.
Because it's pretty unlikely that a cat or a noisy miner or whatever it might be is going to chase a bird into something that's really prickly and dense.
yeah.
But small birds don't mind. They can kind of avoid the prickles and get in there. Like superb fairy wrens will nest in blackberries, even though they're an exotic plant and they're a massive pest. They don't mind them.
Oh, there's some cool wetlands over here too.
Yeah, this is another low-lying area. It doesn't look too wet at the moment.
But still some good native understory there.
Yeah,
Indigenous
yeah.
understory. Have you got any projects that you're really proud of close to the city? I'm sure you've got many, but is there one that springs to mind that you get people to drive past or anything?
Oh, so I can talk about a project. You won't be able to drive past it. You're gonna have to walk.
Yeah. I'm up for that.
But I work across multiple different institutions, and
Yes.
I've also done some work with the University of Melbourne and
Yep.
an absolutely amazing urban ecologist, Dr Kylie Soanes.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the pleasure of working on the Birrarung Trail Floating Wetlands project,
Amazing.
which is a project that's owned and managed by the City of Melbourne Council. So if you haven't seen them, there's a series of artificial islands that have been kind of installed in the lower reaches of the Birrarung. So there's a couple of them that are right near the aquarium. There's 2 slightly further downstream at a place called Yarra's Edge, and then there's one in the Docklands. And the idea behind them is that there wasn't really any space left on the banks of the river to try and bring some indigenous vegetation back. We can go this way. It's all just concrete. It's been so heavily modified
Yes.
there. So in order to get some of that indigenous wetland vegetation back, we kind of had to make an island
Right.
and put it on the island. So yeah, there's these like floating structures covered in locally native plants. And they also have a series of different, there's a common bronzewing. I love those guys.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, chunky little pigeon.
With those striking colours on the edges, hey?
Yeah.
Just
They've also got like ramps on
Yep.
them to try and help larger birds like black swans enter and exit the water. They've got a couple of different perches and railings so that birds like cormorants can come out of the water and dry their wings in the sun. So a few different things that have been added with birds in mind to try and give them kind of a safe spot that they can hang out and they don't have to be bothered by people and cars and dogs and everything else that's going on in the middle of the city.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Are you happy with the results of how that's panning out too?
Yeah, definitely. It's been an awesome project to be involved with because there's been so much community support.
Yes.
So shortly after the weather, if we could make this work in places like Lilydale Lake, Or, yeah, as you say, some of those big housing developments, they often put in artificial lakes, and it could be a great way to add some more habitat on islands.
Is there a big dream that you've got for urban conservation, like in the space of the work that you do?
Yeah.
Is there something that you're working towards, even if it's a lifelong goal?
I guess my hope is that at some point in the future, biodiversity is like the starting point for all developments. The first thing they think about is what's already at the site and how can we actually make it better,
Yeah.
rather than going, oh, well, we'll just clear it and then we'll offset it
Yep.
by protecting some patch that's 800 kilometres away,
Yeah.
which is wildly different
to
and
the
no one
detriment
will
of the
ever
city.
see.
Yeah, yeah.
It just makes no sense to me. Whereas they could be going, okay, so we have a degraded patch of grassland, let's deliver the development, but then let's also really restore this and get it to a better state than where it started.
I guess when you start thinking about all those pollinators, relationships, like some of them could just keep going if you just had some of these little patches around, couldn't
Absolutely,
they?
yeah. So, some animals are going to need large areas of habitat, but then others, they don't at all. They can thrive in really tiny spaces. So every little patch matters.
Do you think people's backyards play a role in all this?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Because we're kind of... Can we get in there?
I don't know. It's
Well, looks like we can. Cool.
I sort of didn't look keen on it, but suddenly it emerged that you could open it. So
It's probably just to keep dogs out.
yeah, we are entering into a natural gated community, it seems, of a billabong.
Yeah, it is a billabong.
A bit dry at the moment.
It is. Yeah, not
But
a
these
lot of water.
formations are really interesting, aren't they? Like, working along the Greater Yarra area, you see billabongs that are still intact in places, and
Yeah,
you think they must be such significant habitat.
absolutely. Yeah, considering, all of this area would have been covered in floodplains.
Do you find yourself keeping abreast of the odd things that do pop up in the city from time to time?
I try to,
Yeah.
to see, oh, you've seen a Nanking night heron here, that's cool. But yeah, you kind of have to be connected to the right people to know.
Yeah, it is, isn't
What's
it? It's
turning
pretty
up
quiet, yeah. I remember when the Power Flowers in the Botanic Gardens.
Yes.
And there's all these whispers of, come check it out, but don't tell anyone.
Don't tell
So
anybody, yeah.
the exact spot sort of thing. I
Yes.
think. Yeah, and
And that's important. You don't want
Yeah.
to disturb them.
thinking about orchids and things like
Yeah.
that have been lost out of urban areas.
Yep.
And there's, which have complex relationships with fungi and pollinators and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you ever take that sort of stuff into consideration in the urban context, or are we sort of building things outside and just having glimpses in the city, or are we looking to rebuild full ecosystems?
Yeah, I guess that in certain areas there would be scope to kind of really go for it and try to restore things to be a fully functioning ecosystem. But I guess in a lot of the spaces that I've done work in, things are potentially a bit too far gone, or we're working with quite a small site. So there's going to be limitations as to what you can achieve. But definitely places like Royal Park, it's so close to the city and it's a massive parcel of land. Like the Australian native garden there is just beautiful.
Yeah, stunning.
And they're doing some cool experimental stuff around like wildflower meadows, and yeah, so places like that I think have real potential.
Are there any patches around the city that, other than Royal Park, that you sort of eye off and go, geez, I'd love to turn that into a park?
Oh, like pretty much every single park other than Royal Park near the city
Yep.
it's grass,
Yep.
it's some exotic trees,
Yep.
and not a lot else. And there's so much more that we could do with those spaces. And things that would also benefit the people that are visiting them as well. Being able to, engage with some of our native vegetation rather than just whatever the first white folks planted. But it's tricky because some of the trees there are really, really old.
Yep.
It's not something that you can just replace overnight.
Yeah, yeah.
So you kind of have to wait until they get to the end of their lifespan and then slowly kind of systematically replace them with native options.
It it makes me wonder about, and I get stuck on this thought all the time of the population of Melbourne, and whenever I see those numbers, and you sort of see Victoria, and then you see this sort of 80 to 90% of the population's in Melbourne.
Yes.
And you think about how big a number that is. We're talking 5 million, 6 million.
5 million people.
And how do we encourage people to get an understanding of the importance of these conservation values or these natural values that are part of, Melbourne's landscape, iconic species that have been there forever and are sort of dwindling? How do you get that collective community awareness about it? And that's the bit I get stumped on all the time, but it seems essential to move forward into the next sort of phase of getting people to convert parks into things. And
I think that the first step is just getting them to experience it.
Yep.
We're asking them to connect with species that maybe they've never seen. They don't even know that they exist, because they've lived their whole life in a heavily modified area that has exotic trees and just open grass in the local park. They've never been somewhere where it's more of a natural bushland setting. So being able to, restore places back to closer to where they started prior to the arrival of Europeans, I think is a really important first step.
And there's lots of
There's
scientific...
an eastern rosella.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Aren't they beautiful? I reckon they're an underrated bird.
They are underrated.
Yeah.
They're so colourful.
I think if someone from another country who was a birdo came and saw that...
they'd be thrilled.
They'd be thrilled. I love seeing them. And it's hard to imagine when you're talking about that connection. Like, we're walking through here now and having this experience and seeing a beautiful bird like that, bright yellow and red and green. How could this not be appealing to the...
I know.
How could everyone not want this? Because, I mean, it's peaceful. There's scientific data that backs up, spending time in places like this.
Yeah,
really.
There's been studies now that have shown that bird watching in particular is actually really good for your well-being.
Yeah.
You walk away from it feeling so much better off than where you started. It's also an opportunity to get people outdoors so they're more active, and they're also creating social connections with other people that are interested in the same things. So it's good for so many reasons.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times in my life where I've been slightly ashamed to be a bird watcher, I've got to say. and hearing all this sort of stuff puts a bit of wind behind the sail.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting to go look at birds.
That's what I need. That's the mantra I need to say in the morning every day. It's just, there's nothing wrong to want to go look at birds. But I think everyone should experience it. Like, it's just, it doesn't have to be a high impact sport or anything, does it?
No.
Like, it's just go for a walk and
go for a walk, see what turns up. Even if you don't know what the bird is, then at least it's an opportunity to learn and go, okay, well, I think it was about this size and it was this colour. Like, there's heaps of great apps out there now that can help you identify different birds or different anything that you see, whether maybe you're interested in orchids, whatever it is.
Have you ever converted someone into a bird watcher?
I don't know about converted them, but I have run guided on different kind of birding tours and stuff in urban areas.
Oh, great.
Hello, cute dog.
Oh, that's something to keep an eye out for. You do bird watching tours in Melbourne?
Sorry.
G'day.
Hello. So it's not necessarily something that I'm organising, but something that's often organised by local councils. So there's actually one coming up right here at this site.
Oh, really?
In October. It's called the Breakfast with the Birds.
Yep.
And it's something that Banyule City Council runs every year. And we get, around 100 people who will rock up as long as it's good weather. And what we do is we divide them up into about 4 groups, and we all go out and walk different routes within this park. So we'll stop at that swamp that we were at earlier, and we'll also take them off track to some cool spots to try and find some of those smaller birds. And then when we come back together, we all have something to eat, and we kind of go through and make a list of all the different species that we all saw on the morning. So it's kind of a way to census the birds that are here on that particular day. And it's also just an awesome way to get people outside and thinking more about birds in their local area. like I often have really good conversations with some of the people that come along who will ask me about a bird they saw in their backyard, or, you know, how can we get more of those in our local park or whatever it is. So yeah, it's a really fun thing to do.
That is fantastic. What about Melbourne conservation networks? Do you think there's a space to create more? Do you think...
Yeah.
What do you think there needs to be for empowering and enabling people to be part of Melbourne conservation?
Yeah, so there are some existing networks. So if we're talking about like suburbia and people's backyards, there's a really fantastic initiative called Gardens for Wildlife, which is run by a lot of local councils across Greater Melbourne, and they do an awesome job about getting people to think about how they can use their garden as a space for them, but also a space for native animals. And then I guess there's also lots of active friends of groups. So there's one for this park, then they've been working here for like 50 years.
Wow.
They've been heavily involved in the restoration of this site. So yeah, there's some really, dedicated people out there, and plenty of opportunities for others to get involved.
Did you have any people that sort of were influential to you on your conservation journey? I know there'll be many, but any in particular that spring to mind?
I guess, like the one person, I was already at uni at this stage, so I knew I was on this track.
Yep.
But I still remember a man who's now retired now, Professor Mike Clark. He was working at La Trobe University, and when I first started my degree, I was like in the first week of doing a science degree at La Trobe, and he gave a lecture to us. Oh, watch, there's a bike. It's all good. And he was just full of such passion and such love for the environment that it was impossible to not be inspired by that man. And I was so fortunate to end up doing my PhD in the same lab group as him.
Wow.
By that stage, he was, more or less retired, but it just amazing to be able to work kind of alongside him and to hear all of his knowledge. He's got so much knowledge about the birds of Melbourne and beyond. So he was definitely a big inspiration for me. This is the Yarra Birrarung.
That's the Birrarung.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very peaceful.
It's lovely knowing a place like this exists so close to the city.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. I've been birding with him.
Have you?
Our Powerful Hours stuff we did once,
cool.
and it was magic. He's a wonderful guy.
He is.
There's some cool plants along here too.
Yeah.
Gynatrix and stuff. And
it's a bit of a narrower kind of track, so there's a few people on mountain bikes sometimes, but it's a good spot to walk.
What a great spot to get away from it all too, hey?
Yeah, definitely.
And so these blackberry canes here, although a weed, still serving some habitat purposes?
Yeah, like they're still providing structure for smaller birds to get in and amongst it. It's early September now, so there's potentially going to be birds looking to build nests soon. And even though it's spiky, it's still good spot for a nest.
When did you first get an interest in conservation in general, do you mind me asking?
Yeah, so when I finished high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah, right.
I knew that I loved the environment, I loved animals, but I didn't want to be a vet. So I actually took a year off and I disappeared overseas for 6 months, and I went and volunteered with an organisation called Tartaruga Marina, which means sea turtle in Portuguese.
Wow.
And I was kind of, living and working in a small village on the east coast of Brazil. There's a really old windmill here.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so apparently it was here, like when all of this used to be farming country, like it was used for grazing cattle when the first white folks arrived, and they've retained this really old windmill to kind of remember that.
It does cut a bit of an image, doesn't it? It's really interesting. So we're looking at the banks of the Yarra. That's the Birrarung, yeah? That's the Birrarung right there.
Yeah, right there.
With some decent river red gums next to it. And then there's an old windmill just gently rocking along between all the shaded trees.
Yeah.
pretty picturesque. It's pretty cool.
It is. It's a really nice spot.
And so you're falling in love with turtles?
Yeah. I kind of, spent a lot of time patrolling beaches late at night looking for nesting hawksbill turtles, and we would kind of let the females come up onto the shore. They'd lay their eggs, and then we'd mark the location of the nest and make sure it was protected. There was a lot of problems with foxes there, which is fairly universal. Hello.
G'day.
And yeah, I actually had the chance to be working alongside PhD students who were doing their research on turtles, and that was kind of the moment where I was like, I want to do this. I want to do a PhD in conservation. I want to do research and try and restore things back to what they once were.
Yeah, amazing.
Protect what we still have. So yeah, I came back from Brazil and went, I'm doing this degree at La Trobe, and the rest is history.
Very much history, because you've had a huge impact with the stuff you're doing, and it's really cool. I want to ask a question about critical weight range mammals.
Yeah.
I'm going to be just all over the shop with these questions.
That's fine.
So thinking of bandicoots and potoroos, and when I'm reading the old journals about Melbourne and stuff, they're everywhere, you know? Like
yes, like overrun.
Overrun, you can't...
Oh, bike.
Oh, sorry. Have a good one.
If we head back this way, we'll go past another billabong.
Oh, sweet. And thinking about that, and how much of a role they must have played in moving
soil around.
And all sorts of fungi and stuff like that. What do you think? How do we
get them back?
Yeah, is there a place in the city to set aside a reserve for things like that? Because, you know...
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
So, once upon a time I worked for Nanyuck Tamboree Wildlife Sanctuary, which
really
was
cool.
Formerly La Trobe
Yeah.
Wildlife Sanctuary. And that was very much, when I was there, that was always the end dream. Because it's a 30-hectare reserve that's all kind of revegetated, restored bushland. And it has a predator-proof fence around the outside. So no cats, no foxes, nothing but native, well, there's a lot of kangaroos, there's emus, wonderful birds. But the idea was that maybe one day it would be a release site for things like bandicoots or potoroos or other kind of digging mammals. Hasn't happened yet, but that I think would be a really great opportunity because we do have the existing fence. They're not going to get eaten by everything.
It's amazing. And I guess there's places like the Briars down the peninsula. Now got southern brown bandicoots and...
Southern brown bandicoots are really weird animals. They turn up in unusual places, like super close to highways, and like they're not too fussy about having this nice pristine habitat. They just turn up places where it's like, oh, you might get hit by a car here, maybe don't. But there's heaps of them at Cranbourne Botanic Gardens. Massive population down there.
Which I guess, potential corridors in the future and stuff.
Yeah.
And I see there are some of these hugely endangered species that occur around Greater Melbourne.
Yes.
We have like plains wanderers rocking up in Bunnings car parks in Werribee and stuff
crazy.
like that. And growling grass frogs hanging out.
Yes.
And Dinellaromena and all those other things.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about some of these really nationally endangered species that are hanging on the outskirts of the city?
Yeah. I think they're the kind of things that we really need to be celebrating so much more and bringing into even like the primary school curriculum to be like, this is a really important animal or a really important plant. There's, only 300 left of them in the world or whatever it is, and it lives right here. Like, that's super exciting. And even though the kids might not get to see it in person, like knowing that that's just down the road and it's so critically endangered, they're probably learning about things like tigers or polar bears, these like big, charismatic mammals, but there's something equally as endangered probably around the corner.
Do you know, for audio reasons, I had to hold myself back from applauding those statements because I think that's such a great idea and it's so true. Like we've talking about that population base again and thinking that they might not have a connection with these species that are such a
Yeah.
more endangered than some of the ones they're learning about. And just around the corner.
Yeah, and just like the bandicoots, things like growling grass frogs, they turn up in really weird spots where you've got a pretty degraded wetland, or it's like a river that's been, has a lot of erosion and there's agriculture on either side, but they're still there. They still make it work. So I think, yeah, definitely we need to be celebrating those guys because they're hardy. They're like your true Aussie battlers. Everyone loves an Aussie battler. That sounded like a baby galah or something.
Really?
Like there's wattle birds, but something else sounded more cockatoo-y.
It's that droney sound for a second, isn't it?
Like it's having a whinge about something. That's a yellow-faced honeyeater that's calling.
You really did do well at that calling stuff, didn't you? Like, I think we need to acknowledge...
And I'm probably quite rusty, actually.
No. I think we need to acknowledge what a piece of work that was to...
Yeah, there's all these, they're on CD.
Yeah.
And it's like this man's voice, and he'll be like sulfur-crested cockatoo. And then they just start playing the bird call.
Can you do a new one of those? Can you update it for the new generation?
It's not that guy.
Yeah, just so it's not that guy. And if that guy's listening, you're great. I listen to those CDs too. But it's just time for a new one. And I'm suggesting that you're...
I don't know if that man would still be with us, to be honest.
That's a fair call. Yeah. Bird song of something rather, wasn't it? But yeah, absolutely. But that's a really hard process to go through, to sort of think, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to save this to a part of my brain where I can access it whenever I need. Because it's not something you're often in control of, and some people have to put techniques in to remember things.
Yeah, so I often had a cheat sheet with me when I was in the field where I would try to write down, phonetically, if there were calls that I knew that I struggled with, I'd write down what I think it sounded like, and often guidebooks will give you, it sounds like this, but sometimes you listen to it and you're like, I don't know if it does. I'd write down what I thought it sounded like, and then I could refer to that if I was ever in a situation where I was like, I don't really know what that one was. I found that working in an urban area, knowing bird calls was so important because often you couldn't see the bird. You might hear it make a noise, but it's behind someone's house, or there's a fence in the way or something. Yeah. So you really needed to be able to identify them based solely on call.
So those wattle birds, as an example, would you have a phonetic example of how you'd...
No, that's really hard. Or I might just describe it. I don't know, like an eastern spinebill call.
Yep.
It kind of goes up, down, up, down, up, down, like that.
Yeah.
And that would help me remember it. And then when you'd hear it, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's what it is.
And can we have a second to acknowledge how cool pardalotes are? Do you love pardalotes?
Yeah, pardalotes are amazing.
Yeah.
So tiny.
Yeah.
And so loud.
Yeah. And that's something that can pop up in a weird spot, like often a building site or something to jump into. Yeah.
They're super interesting because they feed way up high in the eucalypt canopy, but then sometimes they're going to build their nests at ground level and just kind of burrow into some kind of embankment. So, I'm used to seeing them way up high, but then in nesting time, they can be, down on the ground and digging away to find a spot to lay their eggs, which is really cool.
There's so many of these. I guess there's some species in Melbourne that may occur that are hard to detect sometimes too. I guess feathertail gliders is one of those things that you just never know where they are. Sort of, they're pretty cryptic.
They are so tiny.
Yeah, and even I guess some species that are maybe more common but hard to see, like mistletoe birds and things like that.
Yes, I've only ever seen a mistletoe bird twice, and once was quite a long way away through binoculars, and the second time was right up in my face, but it was entirely by accident.
Really?
I kind of just spooked it, and it was right there. It would have been a metre from me.
What's the deal? Because you reckon they should be everywhere. They must get around.
They do, but I think there's also been, there's nowhere near as much native mistletoe in the landscape as what there would have once been. Yep. And there was a point, I think a few years ago before COVID hit, that the city of Melbourne was actually going out and actively infecting eucalypts in the CBD with mistletoe because
Really?
it's really good for from a biodiversity perspective.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily kill the tree. If anything, it wants the tree to survive because it's living off the tree's nutrients. But yeah, we don't see them everywhere, that's for sure, because they are so closely linked to there being a patch of mistletoe or a number of patches.
Yeah, right. If you're listening to this and you're living in a multi-storey apartment in the CBD,
Yeah, which a lot of people do.
and you're thinking, I'm working full time,
Yep.
what can I do to help Melbourne's ecology, or how can I participate in conservation?
Yeah,
Would you have any ideas?
absolutely. So if you're in an apartment,
Yep,
you obviously can't go out and make a beautiful biodiverse garden
yep,
because you don't have the space, and that's totally understandable. Same for a lot of folks who are renting. But one thing you can do is you can provide water, and water is a really limiting resource in cities because we have concreted everything. So it tends to flow away as soon as it rains, it goes down drains, disappears. So if you can have some kind of bird bath, or not even a fancy bird bath, anything that's going to hold water, it's going to be really helpful to provide something for birds to drink and also bathe in. Potentially also possums, you never know, depends where you are. And then in terms of beyond your lovely little balcony, you can also be looking at getting involved if you have the time with friends of groups, say at Royal Park. It's a massive parkland. They have a really active friends of group. They do bird surveys there every month, and they're also out helping with re-veg or weeding or whatever's happening. That's one way that you can be contributing to the biodiversity of the city, which isn't a long trek by any means. It's just a tram, a couple of minutes north.
I like that. It's very accessible. What about if you've got an urban area, and let's say you've got a patch of grass. I don't know if this hypothetical is relevant to anyone, so it might be obsolete in me even mentioning it, but let's just do it anyway.
Yep.
You've got a patch of grass and a patch of weeds, right?
Yeah.
And you want to build some habitat.
Yep.
Should you be going to the weeds? Should you be planting new stuff? Should you be staging things?
Yeah. So I guess if you pull everything out at once and then plant something new, you're going to have to wait a bit for that new habitat to have any kind of value. So there's going to be a while where there's just nothing there, really. So ideally you want to do it in stages, so you don't just have a bare patch. And what you put in is going to be so dependent on what you want to see in your garden, what's already existing in the local area. Like, are you keen to see blue-tongued lizards? Or do you want to attract native bees? Or are you keen on birds like me? Like whatever it is, you got to think about what you would love to come and visit that patch.
So have sort of a conservation target that
Yeah.
you're working towards. I've never heard that. That's really clever.
So like if it's like a blue-tongued lizard, you're probably going to think more about having rocks and logs and mulch and stuff like that, because that's where they'll love to get in underneath. Whereas if we're thinking about like native bees, it's all about planting indigenous flowering vegetation, things like Dianella amina, like you mentioned earlier. Maybe not that species exactly, but something similar that has flowers they can feed from. And then if it's birds, we're probably going to have to go, shrubs, stuff that's providing habitat for insects, and then also flower resources as well.
That's great. So do you have a particular affinity to this place?
Yeah, it's such a lovely, peaceful spot. And yes, there's people riding their bikes and walking their dogs and stuff, but like it's a place where you can go into some of that more denser stuff and you'd never know that you were close to the city, which is really nice.
I think it's cool how there's always something to learn from these places too, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the thing I like about Banyule Flats is that it's gone through such an evolution over the years that it was once upon a time a natural woodland with billabongs, and then it was kind of converted into this cattle grazing kind of landscape. And then once the cattle were gone, it's slowly being restored.
Yeah.
So it's been constantly transitioning, which is really interesting because it has heaps of value as habitat, but it hasn't always looked like this, and it could change again in the next 20 to 30 years.
What do you think about bird re-releases? I know they're doing stuff
Yeah.
with helmeted honeyeaters and
Yes.
species like that. Do you think there's much of a role for that in the future of the city, or?
Yeah, I think there's always like species releases or translocations, reintroductions, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
They're super interesting. I think it makes a lot of sense when you're supplementing an existing population like the helmeted honeyeaters. They already exist in that landscape, and they have done for potentially thousands of years. They've just struggled, so we're just trying to get more genetic diversity back into the population. That makes so much sense. I think when it becomes risky is if we're looking at introducing an animal that either hasn't occurred here for quite some time or has never occurred here.
Yeah.
Because then we just don't know what's going to happen. There's so much more uncertainty, I guess. So that's the only thing that would worry me. But otherwise, absolutely, let's get more individual birds out there.
That was the amazing Dr. Jacinta Humphrey. I encourage you, go check her out on social media, look her up online, or see if you can find your way to one of her bird walking talks. I guarantee you'll love it. Thanks for listening to Finding Melbourne's Nature. You can find us on all your streaming platforms or on the website findingmelbournesnature.com. Thanks for listening, and hope you can join us for another walk soon.